Looking back on your career, which single decision or project stands out as the most pivotal moment that significantly shaped your trajectory? Well, that really happened when I was around 36 years old. But to get to that point and it make any sense, I really gotta kind of take you back to a little bit of my childhood and my upbringing with my family and my work experience to get us to that point. By the way, I'm Scott Glover. We're in Mid-America Flight Museum, which is mostly an aviation museum with some automobiles and then also helicopters. We got about 60 flyable aircraft and helicopters. We're in Mount Pleasant, Texas. And I started this museum about 10 years ago. But starting back at my childhood, I grew up in the feed manufacturing business. My mom and dad had a feed mill. They started in 1950, actually. And fast forward, the man that actually helped my mom and dad build their first feed mill was the man who helped me design my pet food plant many years later. So, you know, there's a lot of tiebacks to childhood to what happened later in life. Growing up in the feed manufacturing business, when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I was just loading trucks, working, helping mom and dad on the weekends and after schools, driving trucks, so forth and so on through high school. I went to Baylor University in Waco, Texas. I got a degree in business. And during that time, almost every weekend, I came home and I did all the formulation for all of our foods. We actually started a mineral plant, and so we were doing mineral balances for dairy cows. And so I was very involved with the family business from high school through college. And then when I graduated from college, December of '87, I came back to work in the family business full time. And we grew that business, and then my parents actually sold that business. Unbeknownst to me, I thought I'd be running a feed mill when I was 65 years old, but no, fate had other plans. My parents were good friends with the Pilgrims that owned the second largest chicken manufacturing producing company in the United States. And they sold literally our business over dinner one night to Mr. Bo Pilgrim at the time. So I actually owned another small feed mill in Little Rock, Arkansas. And another tieback is during that period of time, the man you will hear me speak of, Antoine Albin, worked at that business. I didn't even know him then. He was in sales and I had a general manager there. So I had that little business running, and then my parents sold our feed mill. It was a Glover feed mill, and the new company kept me on for 3 days, and they said they no longer needed my services. And I thought they would keep me for at least a month or so. But anyway, I was kind of let go. I was never going to stay there. They didn't really fire me. They just wanted to take over. So I went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and we ran that little business, built in 1922, the T-Boat Milling Company. And long story short, the general manager I had was stealing from me, found that out, and I fired him. And there I was, a young kid running a feed mill, had about 20 employees, needing a general manager. Antoine, this young guy, he's about 8 years younger than me. He was in sales, but a really hard worker, and we got to know each other really well. I was looking for a general manager, and finally I said, you know, I just need somebody with a good work ethic. And I hit Antoine up and said, hey, would you like to be the general manager of this plant? And I think he was 22, 23 years old at the time. He said, sure, yeah, that'd be great. And so we doubled his salary overnight, and he became the manager of that company. And we together grew that company, and we're doing really well with it until it burned. I think it burned somewhere around 1997. At that point in time, I actually had insurance, but long story short, it was 11 months for me to get the insurance check because it was just forever. The banks were on me, and the banks tried to put me into bankruptcy during that period of time because I didn't have the cash to pay off my notes at the time. But at the end of the day, insurance came in. I paid off all the banks, everything with interest, never shorted anybody anything. But I was out of business at that point in time in my life, and I was a little bit tired, I was a little bit burned out, and so my passion and my love, you'll find out, we're in an airplane hangar. I've loved aviation since I was 9 years old, started taking lessons when I was 15, soloed on my 16th birthday, licensed on my 17th birthday. Some people play golf, some people fish. My pastime and my passion is flying. So at that point in time, I went out and bought a couple of 172s, a twin engine, a glider, and an acrobatic airplane, and I started a flight school. And I had the most fun for 2 years teaching aviation. Didn't make any money at all. I didn't lose any money, but I mean, I was working hard, had a lot of students, about 40 students, ended up hiring a couple instructors. And then as life progressed, I had the opportunity to start doing some corporate flying. So I started flying a Baron, then a Conquest, and then Pilgrim, the man that bought my dad's plant, he had a King Air, and I got my rating in his King Air. And really my first big lucky break in aviation was he went ahead and he bought a jet. He bought a Hawker jet. So to transition from a King Air to a jet was kind of a big deal, and I went to school and learned to fly the jet. And I never worked for Mr. Pilgrim as a salaried employee. I was a contractor. He ended up hiring all of his pilots he needed, so I wasn't being used much. And I got a gig working out of Baltimore, and I moved to Baltimore, really Annapolis. Actually lived on a boat. I mean, it's an interesting part of my life, had a lot of fun. But I flew a jet for a family out of Baltimore for about 4 or 5 years. All during this period of time, I had the desire to build a pet food plant. Wanted to do it back when my mom and dad was there. We serviced about 200 mom and pop shops. So the order would come in like, give me a ton of range cubes and a ton of creep feed, 20 bags of scratch grain, and throw in 10 bags of dog food. Well, our dog food was made by Pied Piper in West Texas. We had a high pro and a maintenance. So I didn't know much about dog food, but I knew back then dog food was selling for $15 for 40 pounds, and a bag of range cubes was selling for $5 for 50. So there had to be more margin in pet food. I always just liked the pet food business. My dad liked it too, but we never put in an extrusion plant. It's just difficult to put an extrusion plant in a feed mill. So all this time that I was flying, I was putting together a business plan to build a pet food plant. And when I would fly, we would land in Florida, I would go out and I would call on feed and farm stores and pet stores that later on, I actually sold some of those 10 or 12 years later. It was funny. I look back on some of those fun times of my life in flying. But put together a really nice business plan. I'd saved up about $300,000 cash. I was single, not married, and no kids. So I didn't really spend any money. And so I accumulated a little bit of cash. So I went to a total over about a year, 9 banks. 9 banks total. And those banks, each one of them turned me down. They were nice, but what I needed to borrow and how much cash I had and the business plan I had just wasn't sufficient. They wanted me to go with an SBA loan. And an SBA loan, in reality, it's a great government security for banks, so they have basically a guaranteed loan. But in reality, it's very slow. You apply for additional cash, it could take months. Well, in a manufacturing business, many times we need $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 cash on Friday. So SBA I knew was not the way to go. So over a period of time, my parents saw the struggle that I was going through. I was flying airplanes, making really good money actually, but wanted to get in the pet food business, and they saw really no way for me to be able to get in, and I didn't either, but I kept trying. And they said, hey, we want to help you, because I never asked them for a penny. We were a very close family. And they put about $1 million. We actually had an airplane, a turboprop, and they sold it. And they put that cash in the business. And my $300,000, at that point, I borrowed money from basically a local bank. And I finished the plant. From about age 35 to about 39, or 38, it took me 3 years to build the plant. So when I say build the plant, my dad and I, we built a fabrication shop 150 by 50 foot wide with an overhead crane. And we built the elevator legs, we built the scales, and we built the bins. And we built the fat application system. We built all of that, and I bought an 80-ton crane. It was old then. And literally, I set every stick of steel in that plant that became Mid-America Pet Food. And when I finished it, I had a total contribution in that business of $1.8 million, which anybody watching this today and they think about getting in the pet food manufacturing business with warehouse, with mixers, with receiving pit and unloading and the whole bit. I had a new extruder actually. It was from Taiwan, but it was a new extruder. That was almost unheard of. Everybody said it was going to cost me $4, $5, $6 million to get in. I said, no, it's not. They said, how do you think that? Because I didn't have it. So I got in. I was very determined. I got in the business. Thankfully, about 6 months before I got in the business, Antoine joined me. Antoine came, he was working construction during the Katrina hurricane. He was doing cleanup down in New Orleans, and that job was over. And was a point in his life that he could move to Mount Pleasant, and he helped me finish the plant. And we got in a car and we drove 1,000 miles one week, calling on feed mills, kind of like my mom and dad's. And we got turned down. And then finally, we got to South Texas in San Antonio. We went to Lizzie and Eccles, and they bought a trailer load of dog food from me. And then that night, it's just funny. I got to tell this story. We were cheap, and we were staying in Motel 6s. And we went to the Hyatt Regency, and we got a room. We shared a room. And we went to the Minger Bar, and we really celebrated the fact that we were in business now. The next morning, got up, luck was on our side, went to MG Feeds, and lo and behold, they bought a trailer load of dog feed from us too. So we went back home. I had to get in an airplane and fly to Kansas to pick up a fella, Rick Frederick, and bring him to Mount Pleasant to show us how to run an extruder, because Antoine and I did not know how to run an extruder. So Rick really helped us. It was 2 or 3 trips, and we made that dog food. We shipped it to those customers, and we were in business. And from that point on, Antoine ran the plant, I ran sales, and my mom at that time, and I lost my mom about 9 years ago, but my mom was an integral part of the business. She did all the ingredient buying, and she was the CFO, she did it all. And it was just amazing. It was a 3-legged stool. If any one of us 3 had died the first 2 or 3 years, I think we would have taken bankruptcy. It was that close. But we ran sales, and then I got the thing up to around 30 million sales. Completely organic, just one customer at a time. And at that point, we were in business. And once we got to that point, we had good cash flow. You know, the rest is kind of history. You're able to grow, and you have cash flow, and you could grow it. So that's that part of the story. But can you describe a time when you had to overcome a major obstacle in your career, and what key strategies did you use to navigate through that situation? And that was the time that I talked about the money situation. I didn't have the money. Couldn't get the money. Nobody would give you the money. I mean, it was just so tight out there. And I didn't understand. Today, if I was completely broke and had a really good idea, there are ways to get money, but I didn't know about it. I grew up in Mount Pleasant, Texas, and I knew traditional financing. I knew bank loans, and didn't really have any friends that had any money, so they couldn't help me out much. But there are other ways to do that. But that was my biggest struggle. And the thing that really happened was I was very determined. I kept working. I didn't get, after the 8th bank, I still went to the 9th, and I think I would have gone to the 10th and the 11th. And I was continuing to add cash. I was going to try to figure out a way to make this thing happen. But my parents stepped up to the plate, and honestly, without them, I don't think I would have ever made it. And just to tell you, and then later on in 2014, I did sell part of the company to private equity, and one of the proudest days of my life is I paid my parents off of their loan with full interest. Of course, they didn't want any interest. They wanted to help out their kid, but hey, they got 2 more kids, so their estate needed to be whole. So that was the most proud part of my life, is to be able to pay my parents back with interest. And that was very satisfying to me to be able to do that. And the last question right here, and I think it's an important question, because you see people who are very, very successful that are out there, and, you know, how do you do it? What's your advice to people? You look at sports players, you know, you go to one of the big sports guys, you know, what's your advice to a young kid coming up, you know, in basketball? Well, you know, put the ball through the hoop and don't miss, and you'll be very successful. Well, it's not exactly that easy in business, but the determination is. So what advice would we have as young people, especially regarding navigating challenging and seizing opportunities? That's a key part of the question, seizing opportunities. There's opportunities that pass in front of everybody every single day. What you do with those opportunities is very important. It's very important. I think one of my gifts is I see an opportunity, I grab it. I may not be able to hold on to it, but I give it my best pull to seize that opportunity and hold on to it, and I try it to the very end. People look at me and say, man, everything Scott touches turns to money. Those people obviously have no idea of who I am. Because, I mean, I sold popcorn as a kid when I was 14 years old in the mall. I had 130 calves on the bottle, raising baby calves on the bottle at night, working my night job. I mean, I did a lot of things that didn't make any money at all. I drilled some oil wells that were dry. I mean, I've done it all. I haven't done it all, but I've done a lot of things. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. But I would say to young people growing up, you think you want to go one way, but you have to, maybe this is a pilot thing, you have to have a 41,000 foot view of it. If you're in a big airliner and you're looking down, you've got a big view of what's going on in the world. If you're down in the ditches washing dishes in a restaurant, that's all you see is the dirty dishes coming into you. You got to back out and see really what made that dish, what ingredients went in to make that recipe, how much did that cost, what's our gross profit margin on that right there. Or you can just wash dishes, and guess what, that's important too. So I would say the other thing is once you get in business, the pet food business is not an easy business at all. As a matter of fact, Mid-America Pet Food, formed in 2007, and now Next Level Pet Food that I've recently started with Antoine, we launched it just a year and a half ago. Those are the only two family-owned pet food manufacturing companies in the United States that have their own brand launched this decade. Really, since 2000. The bigs are getting bigger, but there's no new people really entering this market. So it's a tough market. You don't see the Elon Musk and Warren Buffetts building pet food plants. Is it because they don't have money? Of course, they've got all the money in the world. They could build anything. They could buy Extrutech. They could buy anything they wanted. It's a tough market to break in, and just because you got money doesn't mean you can break into this market. And so once you enter in this particular market, you've got to figure out a way to differentiate yourself. And that's true with any business. It doesn't matter what you're manufacturing. How can you make yourself different than the other products that are out there? And again, my competitors are multi-billion-dollar companies, okay? So they've got the resources. They've got teams of attorneys. They've got teams of graphics artists, okay? So you're competing against people who have that, but what they don't have the passion. They don't. These people, executives, they go to work, they come home. They go to work, they come home, and they go play golf, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not even criticizing that. But it's a secret sauce that an entrepreneur has that the big corporate giants do not have. I'm thinking about the business at Saturday. Even when I'm flying one of these airplanes, I'm kind of thinking about what I've got going on Monday, so forth and so on. And that's just the entrepreneurial spirit, and you can't go to college and learn that. As a matter of fact, I'm not nearly up on college like I used to be. I used to think, man, you come into high school, you got to go to college. My mom and dad wanted me to go to college, and I got a college degree, and I'm proud of that. What did I get out of college? I made 2 lifelong friends, amazing lifelong friends out of college that I'd have never met. It was worth my whole 4 years if I didn't learn anything, just to have those 2 friends. Because I tell you, acquiring friends in life is important. You're going to have a lot of acquaintances in your life, a lot of people you go have dinner with, people you consider friends. But when the ox is in the real ditch, how many friends do you really have that will pull you out? Even when you're in the wrong, by the way. You know, it may not be a real pretty situation. Your friends are there for you no matter what. And I think that's really important to develop those friends. And you can't just go do that magically. It's got to evolve. So I would say, pick something you really enjoy. I bought a helicopter from a guy not too long ago. It was a relatively expensive helicopter, $1.5 million. He was an artist. He's an artist. I said, just curious, how do you make this kind of money being an artist? Because that kind of sounds fun to me. I made pet food. I kind of would like to paint too. But he was an artist, and he had an amazing story. He got into art brokering. He was an artist, but he got into art brokering. What I'm saying is, figure out what it is you really want to do, be passionate about it, and work at it. And I think it's not a guarantee. I mean, you got to have a little bit of luck. The stars have got to line up just about right. But the harder you work at this, with the vision that you've got in the business that you want to go after, and you're willing to pivot, that's important. Being able to pivot. I'm going this way, it's not working, I gotta switch. That's something the big boys cannot do. The giants of the world, when I'm talking about my competitors, the huge multi-billion-dollar companies, you can name off the top 10 right quick without me naming them, they cannot pivot. It takes them years to make a change. We're a small little company. We can pivot and we can go. If grain-free is the new thing, guess what? In 2 weeks, we can have grain-free. I mean, you're able to maneuver the market really, really well. And it doesn't matter if you're in pet food or you've got a restaurant or you're in a fabrication manufacturing company. Being able to pivot, I think, is very, very important part of the thing. So a lot of little tidbits that you can get from myself and other people who've been successful. It's not rosy all the way, but I've never had a point in my life other than losing my mom and dad that I was depressed. I get up every morning and I'm happy. Guess what? Not everything's going right, but I get up with a good attitude in the morning. And it's every morning I get up with that good attitude. And I've been blessed with that because I know people that just don't. They get up in the morning, they're just not really happy about it. But I get up with a good attitude every morning and we go for it. I don't care if FDA's coming. We just get through it, you know? It's not fun, but we're only given so many days on this earth. And it's really depressing to go through a day and lose it because you're never going to get that day back. I know I'm rambling right now, but those are some of the key takeaways of my life and my career that have brought me to this point.